Good morning. There we go. Woo! So hi, I'm Josh. I'm one of the pastors here at First Christian Church. A lot of you guys see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off every Sunday. They're like, "Yep, I sure do." Well, hey, we're gonna start off here with a little bit of interaction here. I'm gonna make you move, not move seats, just your arm. It'll be really easy. All right. I need you to raise your hand if you see yourself as a creative person. Raise your hand if you see yourself as a creative person. And no false humility here. Nobody going like, yeah. Nobody wants to be that guy that's like, yeah, I'm awesome. No, just raise. We're all family. Are you creative? All right. Hands down. Now raise your hand if you don't have a creative bone in your body. Like you're not creative at all. You don't get creativity. You don't get abstract art. It's like spreadsheets and schedules, and that's it. All right, hands down. Now, raise your hand if you wish you were more creative. If you wish you had more time, more skill, more ability to be more creative. All right, raise them high. There we go. That's what I thought. Yeah, I understand. I'm with you. All right, I'm with you completely. Personally, I have a deep respect for people who are creative, for people who make things. That's just specifically unique things. It's just something that I love. Unique paintings, unique sculptures, songs, stories. They often leave me in awe of the person who had this creative mind to come up with these unique ideas. I also love it when someone takes something like familiar or well-known, like an everyday object or a popular song, and then adds like this creative twist that makes you see it in a completely new way. I actually have an entire playlist devoted to popular songs, popular rock songs covered in bluegrass, which is a little weird. I love it. I don't know why. I love it when someone takes something familiar and then kind of switches it up. Or like a well-designed tool, like a pocket knife or a pen, when added with a creative flair, kind of shows the crafter's mastery over the form and function of that tool. And it's fascinating to me. So my appreciation for creative people has led me to try my hand at trying out my own creativity. I love trying to be creative. I want to stress trying in that because sometimes the results are a little, let's just say, underwhelming. See, and it's not for lack of trying. You see, I'm a man of a million hobbies. I have way too many hobbies. Every time that I see or interact with something new or something unique, I want to do that thing, okay? Often with results. See, several years ago, I actually fell in love with the art of bonsai trees. You guys know what bonsai trees are? Little miniature trees. It's a Japanese art. You put them in pots. Mr. Miyagi did one in The Karate Kid. Yeah. They look beautiful to me. I don't know why. I love bonsai trees. And so I got obsessed with bonsai trees. I read books on bonsai trees. I went and I saw bonsai gardens. Read online forums about making bonsai trees. And therefore, I had to try my hand at my own bonsai trees. The result was a backyard full of dead sticks in plastic pots. I have a box full of abandoned painting projects, unfinished canvases that I keep telling myself that one day I'll finish. No. I have a set of golf clubs I haven't touched in 4 years. I have an literally obscene amount of journals in my collection. Unfinished journals with like 1 or 2 entries and then blank pages. All right, I probably have 20 journals with nothing in them. I keep telling myself, oh yeah, I'm going to journal. I'm going to buy a new journal just for that. I'll write 1 entry and then completely forget it. See, in the past, I've collected baseball cards. I've collected comic books, gemstones, and most recently, I started collecting swords. I'm that guy. I'm that guy. And see, over the last year, I've even taken up the hobby of blacksmithing. This is actually me at my forge, which is my garage. I call it earning the beard. I've been learning blacksmithing under the tutelage of a member of our church, actually, Steve McAfee. He's been kind of teaching me some of the things. It's a fun hobby. I've been working hard at this for months, training and practicing on my spare time. And at this point, I'm happy to announce that I have mastered the ability of taking rusty chunks of scrap steel and with a lot of hard work, turning them into differently shaped rusty chunks of scrap steel. But something about it is simply fun to me. I enjoy spending time at my forge. And yes, for those of you guys seeing, like I said, that's my garage. I have the world's most understanding wife. I just need to call out that. But I like doing it. I'm not good at it. I make lumps of burned metal. But eventually, after some practice, I assume that I'll make something a little more useful in a coat hook. And that hammering, that work, is fun to me. There's something beautiful about just emptying your mind and just sitting there and bing, bing. But I know it's going to take time to learn. Because that's the thing. Creativity is time-consuming, isn't it? It's time-consuming. It takes time. Many of us wish we could be more creative. There are a lot of hands in this audience. But who has time to devote to things like creativity? There are mouths to feed. There are projects to finish. In a world where busyness is praised, where accomplishment and the amount of activity go hand in hand, it becomes very difficult to justify spending time on creative exercises, right? I mean, after all, the kitchen needs to be cleaned. You have that appointment in the morning. The kids need a ride to practice, and you have to finish that project for your boss by the end of the day. In today's world, creativity seems only possible from a place of leisure. And in our modern, busy culture, leisure often means lazy. And to our modern sensibility, laziness feels like the ultimate sin. You see, my tablet just died. All right, hold on a second. It's true that creativity comes from a place of leisure. That's absolutely true. But what if I told you that we got leisure wrong? That leisure is not about laziness. In a culture that seems obsessed with the busyness of life, with work, with frantic activity, with me running around like this, it's no wonder that we tend to view an abundance of free time in a negative light, right? We equate this idea of leisure with concepts like renewal, with recharge, with rest, and all those concepts by themselves are defined by your ability to do work. You go on vacation to recharge your batteries so you can come back and do more efficient work. You take a break and rest because work is too stressful and you don't want to burn out for work. Yet at its core, the concept of leisure isn't about work at all. It's carefree. It's having time to devote to whatever you want. Leisure at its core is in direct opposition to this idea of work, productivity, and achievement. Google defines leisure in two ways. All right, I love these definitions here. One, the use of free time for personal enjoyment. And two, very similar, the opportunity afforded by free time to do something. Now, two things stand out in these definitions to me. First, leisure involves free time, or time set aside without expectation being placed. And second, leisure is active. It's time that you use. It's time that you do something to invest in enjoyment. And we talked about claiming our free time several times. And several weeks ago, actually, Jed gave an awesome sermon on rest. And if you haven't seen that sermon, I invite you to go online later today, watch that sermon on our website because it's awesome. It's about reclaiming your rest. And several times from this pulpit, we have addressed how important it is to create margin in our lives for the purpose of renewal and for worship. We talked about being deliberate in making time for rest. Just put this down here. And to not get lost in the frantic pace of life, right? But to stop and breathe. We've talked about that. We've talked about how God modeled rest in the very beginning. On the seventh day of creation, Genesis 2:2 says this, On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time rehashing and revisiting this concept, except to offer this brief observation. God is all powerful. God is infinite energy. God does not get tired. So God, the creator of the universe, the most powerful anything, does not need to recharge his batteries after a rough week of work. That means that when God takes a seventh day as a rest day, as the Sabbath, it's not simply about renewal or restoration, but something intrinsically valuable about that time spent apart from the task at hand. Beyond simply catching your breath so that you can be more productive and get back to work. Free time has value beyond just recharging your energy. That time away, the freedom from demand, is actually valuable by itself. And it's not only about restoring your energy to do work. See, in our modern busy world, free time is seen as a luxury, an indulgence, where rest is seen as a necessary step, right? To do work, you gotta rest, take a break. But in modeling the Sabbath from a place of unlimited power and unlimited energy, God shows us that claiming free time is valuable and not simply to be productive. Claiming free time has been a part of the plan for humanity from the beginning. Now, real talk for a second. I'm going to step away from my script. I have to confess, this is an area where me personally, I'm terrible at. I'm someone who loves to be busy, as noted by me running around every Sunday, right? I love to be busy. I hold my stress. I have a hard time taking time for leisure. Yeah, I have tons of hobbies, but if I'm honest, a lot of that is avoidance of work and not simply stopping and enjoying. So I'm a bit convicted when I was working on this sermon as God's kind of opened my eyes to this and realizing that this is an area that I need to learn a lot in how to embrace my leisure time and see the beauty in God's creation. I just had to confess that with you guys today. So, how do we invest that free time? Well, that's where we come back to this idea of creativity. See, what would you say if I told you that no matter what you think about yourself, no matter where you put your hand up in the beginning here, what would you say if I told you that regardless of all that, you are a creative person? You are inherently creative. It is written into your very existence. What would you say if I told you that not only are you creative, but you are creative in a way that is potentially world-changing? And that your intrinsic creative streak inside the core of your being is key to understanding your overall purpose and calling in this world. What would you say? You believe me? Look at the life of a small child. Look at a toddler. Toddlers are unhindered by the pressures of daily life. They're unhindered by the stress of work. They have not been affected by expectations being pressed down on them to deliver a product or to feel the need to be busy. They feel free to imagine, to create, and we call it play. When we were children, we had no problem with this, right? Toys like Lego and Lincoln Logs and Kinects and Erector sets, they capitalized on this childhood need to make things. Other toys like dolls and action figures and dress-up costumes allow children to imagine new adventures and place themselves in the action. Reading and listening to stories allow themselves to place themselves in new worlds and new ideas. And sports and games allow children to create a narrative where they overcome obstacles and achieve victory despite the odds. Childhood is all about creativity. It's as if creative is our default setting. before all the stress of life kicks in and changes how we focus on things. But that's kind of true in adulthood too, though, if you think about it. All the things that we think of as fun are fun because they trip that creative trigger, aren't they? Going to the movies allows us to imagine new worlds and new stories. Spending time on the golf course or the basketball court continues to build that narrative about overcoming obstacles. Even hanging out with friends or going on vacation helps us to create new experiences, widening our understanding and our expectations of the world. Scratching that itch, that seemingly creative itch, has always been fun for us. And this makes complete sense, because after all, we were created by a creative God. Go back to Genesis and look what it's written about God's creation of humanity. Genesis 1:27 says this: So God created human beings in what? In his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. The key thing that separates humanity from the rest of God's creations is that we were created in the image of God. We were created in God's likeness to be like him, as much as a minute, tiny, little, limited human can be like the all-powerful God. What makes us unique is that we are made in the image of a creative God. There are lots of animals that have arms and legs and heads. There's even animals that have thumbs. That doesn't make us different. The image of God is that creative element. God is an artist. He's a storyteller. He's a poet. He could have made this world merely functional and completely devoid of color and beauty. But he went beyond that. He made it beautiful. He made a sunset and a sunrise. He gave us the ability to see color, to appreciate beauty, to admire the world around us, and to make our mark on it. And we were created in that image, in his image, which means that each time we lean into that image, each time we lean into that creative streak, we string notes together for a song, highlight something beautiful, or find an innovative solution to a problem, we are reflecting the very creative nature of God himself. We were created to create, to take what God gave us in this world and highlight its beauty, to make it lively and energetic and encouraging to the world around us. We were created to create art. We were created to create relationships, to solve problems. We were created to imagine a world that is better than it is today. And the beauty in the gospel of Jesus Christ is that regardless of your past, regardless of your failures, regardless of what you've done before, God is still going to use you to make that world happen if you let him. We were created to create, to take what God gave us in this world and to make it beautiful. We are each integral to the mission of restoring and redeeming the world around us. Each step in creation brings us a little closer to imagining perfection, paradise, bringing us back to Eden before sin went and messed everything up. Now, when I say it like that, your hobbies seem really important, don't they? Don't they? Suddenly golf doesn't seem like a waste of time. I'm restoring creation. But before you use that to justify the 3-week fishing trip, or before you spend your entire paycheck on scrapbooking supplies, we need to mention the inherent danger that exists in chasing our hobbies and our passions. Because there is a danger. If we're not careful, it's easy to let these passions dominate our thoughts, our lives. We begin to justify larger and larger expenses. Responsibilities begin to be neglected. In 1 John 5, it says this: Dear children, keep away from anything that might take God's place in your heart. When we allow ourselves, our thoughts, and our desires to be consumed by something other than God, we're walking in dangerous territory. I'm all too familiar myself with hobbies dominating my thoughts. You can ask my wife. I tend to be a bit obsessive. When I engage in a new hobby or a new skill, I just jump in with both feet. I've been obsessed with video games in the past where I played several hours a day because I thought about it when I slept. I've jumped into a new hobby with both feet and needing and using that to justify spending way too much money on single-use tools that I absolutely must have. Convincing myself that all I need is this one expensive thing, and then I'll master the craft. Then you begin thinking about your hobbies at work, daydream, and what's supposed to be your free time starts eating its way into your other responsibilities. This sort of obsessive dominance over your thoughts and desires has a name called idolatry. Idolatry is when we worship, when our worship goes to someone or something other than God. Many things can turn into idols if we're not careful. Money, a common one. Sex, alcohol, work, even family can become an idol if we elevate our family to the point of God. Yet in my experience, nothing seems to steal my devotion quite like my obsessive love of my hobbies and my passion. In Galatians, Paul talks about their lives before being devoted to Jesus. He was addressing the paganism and the idolatry that was prominent in the region around Galatia at the time. However, I love the words that he carefully chooses in how he says this. In Galatians 4, it says this, "However, at that time when you did not know God, you were slaves to those by which by nature are no gods." He doesn't say you were slaves to other gods. In the Greek, he actually says you were slaves to things that are not God. So when you did not know God, you were slaves to things that weren't God. Anything that takes our attention and devotion away from God can quickly become an idol if you're not careful. So how do you guard against letting your hobbies and leisure fall into idolatry? A couple questions here for you. Think to your hobby. Think to your passion. Does it ever cause you to disobey God? Does your hobby give you greater joy than Jesus? Is what you daydream about your hobby? Is your hobby what you fear losing the most? Do you spend more money on your fun than you do anything else? Folks, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you might be in danger of allowing yourself to trip into idolatry here with your hobbies. And it's time to pull back. It's time to rein it in. Maybe run away from that hobby. Time to take a break and reimagine things, reevaluate. If you found yourself in a place there where like you're realizing, you're convicted that, man, I'm spending too much time on this, come talk to one of us. Come talk to one of the pastors. We'd be glad to talk to you about that and get you connected with some resources. Be careful. Because while God created us with a sense of creativity and the ability to seek fun, we also have work to do. We have families that need our attention and energy and finances to resolve. God has always intended for you to enjoy the life and the gifts that you've been given, to take stock of this beautiful world, but not at the expense of everything else that gives our lives purpose. So how do we bring our leisure time under the lordship of Jesus? First, we understand that free time is good, right? Free time is good. God modeled it by stepping away from work on the day of creation. Not simply to recharge, not simply to rest, but because there is something intrinsically good about stepping away. Second, realize that at our core, we are created to create. Everything that we find fun, everything that we find adventurous, trips that trigger. trips that trigger, when we're not just avoiding work, when we're actually having fun and energetic, we're scratching that creative itch that's inside ourselves. Lean into that. Lean into it. And third, be careful. Don't let your passions and desire for fun dominate your thoughts, dominate your desires to the point where you fall into idolatry. Spending time on your hobbies and having fun in this world is good and proper as long as it doesn't begin to take up the place in your life meant for God. So claim your free time. Be creative. Make a beautiful world. Be careful. So we've been, in this series, we've been asking 3 questions at the end of every sermon. Kind of questions for you to consider. Questions for you to think through throughout the week. Here's your first question. What activities, hobbies, and interests bring me enjoyment? What are your hobbies? Some of you know exactly. You're like me. You got a whole garage devoted to it. Some of you are like, I don't know. I haven't thought through that. Think through, when do you have fun? Do you enjoy golf? Do you like to cook and try new recipes? Are you a crafter or a maker? Do you like to read? What is it about that activity that makes you excited, that makes you have fun? 2, is my hobby in danger of becoming an idol? Does your desire for fun get in the way of your desire for God? Would others say that you're obsessed? Think through that, identify that. And then 3, how can my interests or passions honor God and his people? Maybe what is fun to you, maybe that's an act of worship. Maybe that's between you and God. Okay? I doubt my lump of burnt metal is going to help anybody, but man, when I'm in the middle of that, I can zone out and I can worship God. I can see meaning in that. Maybe it's just between you and God. Maybe your fishing is time away so you can focus on the beauty and majesty of creation. But maybe there's a way to leverage that to help others. Take your niece and nephew out to fish, or pass along your talent to an eager apprentice. What are some ways you can leverage that innate creativity? We actually have an event coming up in October that can actually do this. Harvest of Talents. It's this big craft fair where we take donations of people like you, of makers, of creative people that put together stuff and sell them at this craft fair. And then for the purpose, all the money from that craft fair actually go to fund Grace Christian Ministry out in India. So your creative talents can actually have a direct correlation to ministry on the other side of the world. Find a way to leverage your craft, leverage your hobbies, leverage your fun for the sake of his kingdom. Leisure is a good thing, people. Leisure is a great thing, as long as it doesn't become the only thing. Let's pray. Dear Father, God, you are good. You are awesome. You are so amazing. You made this world beautiful. You made this world amazing. You gave us the ability to see art, to highlight beauty, to love the world around us. God, I thank you for that. I thank you for giving us this creative desire. And God, I pray that you give us the ability to lean into that creative desire. I pray that you give us the ability to go out into the world, to make this world yours. Through every little act of creation. Whether it's loving our neighbor and building new relationships, or, even in our crafting, even in our relaxation, making this world more beautiful. God, you are good. And we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.